Good morning, and welcome to the first step show that started so I could share some of my practices for my mornings and has extended into my nightly reviews as well. Yeah, this morning I woke up about 3 o'clock, and of course that voice came in and said, 4 is one thing, but not 3 o'clock, that's a bit early. So I laid in bed for a bit, and the responsibilities tried to take me over until I got up and carried on with the practice that I've been sharing on my shows. Last Thursday, I spoke about the nightly review that I share, and this is a practice that came from my 12-step recovery background and straight out of the book that I read, and it was questions that I would read each night just before I went to bed. And as I had started this journaling process, I would do them in my mind, and at points I would do them with another person on the phone and ask them the questions and listen, and they could do the same for me. And recently I've been using my journal to do the same thing, just write the questions and pray and listen for the answers and see, where it was that I was doing these things, being selfish, being dishonest. And so I actually keep them. I have a sweet little pouch right in the back of my journal here, and I keep my questions right back there. I pretty much know them by heart at this point, but it never hurts to have them there to read. So another thing I keep back there was the other thing I wanted to share today, and this is something that I use quite a bit in my 12-step background, but I still do. There's still useful tools that I use to keep my mind clear and actually see the patterns in my mind, see where I'm compromising, what decisions I'm making, what I'm believing in, really. And so it's the first question, if you remember from last week, if you watched that show, was I would ask, am I being resentful, selfish, dishonest, or afraid? And I would take each one individually and write it on my page, and am I being resentful? And then I would see where those resentments come up, any tiny things, the Course in Miracles, which I study as well, tells us that any annoyance is a veil drawn over intense hatred, because it's all going to bring us back into looking within our mind. So the other thing I keep in my pouch back there is what we call in 12 steps a inventory. And it's an inventory sheet. So it's a little sheet that this is the one I'm currently working on. And the inventory sheet, actually, Nicholas could show it up on the screen, and we can maybe put a link to where I found this. This is a sheet that on the left-hand side, there is a column. And so at night, I'll just pretty much, in my journal, I'll write some stuff down. And if I can't process the stuff or actually get in touch with my part in it or whatever it is, I'll actually go through this little sheet, and I'll put the person's name that I have a resentment for. So in this case, in the left-hand column, I'm resentful at. And this can be a person, a place, an institution, a principle, an idea, anything that's causing me any kind of disturbance. How I share in the morning, I go through the disturbances in my mind. There's the same thing at night. And I'll write that person's name there. And then the next column, the second column, is the cause. And I'll write in the second column the cause. And so the example I have here, and a few nights ago, I had a minor disturbance. And I do this. I actually look for any minor upsets. And is there anything? Why am I not at perfect peace? Because I'm not at perfect peace. There's some kind of conflict in my mind. And it usually manifests as a resentment, fears and so forth. But resentments seem to be the most obvious. And so the other night, I wrote Susanna, who is my wife. She's probably watching. And then, why am I angry? And these were subtle things. And, I wrote, did not help with the dishes. And I wrote, ate all my spaghetti. These things, they may seem minor, but I write those things just to actually point at some deeper things that are going on for me. And then it brings me to the next column, which it says, what part of myself was hurt or threatened? And so in this column, they have the 7 parts of self, which is another thing which I can talk about here. And it's self-esteem, pride, emotional security, pocketbook and ambitions, personal relations, and sex relations. And I go through this and I check each one that it's affecting in me. And self-esteem is how I think of myself. Pride is how I think others view me. Emotional security is my general sense of personal well-being. My pocketbook is my basic desire for money, property, or possessions. My ambitions, which is often a big one, is my goals, my plans, or my designs for the future. Basically, anything I want to happen. My personal relations, is it affecting my relationships with others? Or my sex relations, my basic drive for sexual intimacy. And we'll put a link to that in the chat as well. So when I check these, and for the one I'm talking about now, these things that I perceived in my perception where I was angry, I believed I was angry at not being helped with the dishes, or, someone eating my spaghetti in this case. And I checked pride and ambitions, because the pride one was what I felt, how others viewed me, and that was to the dishes one, or to the eating of the food. The ambition one, I checked, that was as a result of what I wanted to do. I wanted to be doing something else and not that. And what this does is, when I look at these, I can actually start seeing the beliefs. I should be helped. I shouldn't have to do this. Someone else should do it for me. Someone shouldn't eat my food. I can actually start looking at what I'm believing about it. And that helps me get in touch with those things by doing this process. And a lot of this I've done over the years, and it's a habit of mind, but it's always helpful to write these down. Usually I use them when I'm caught in big ones, ones that I can't really escape. And then the fourth column is, where was I to blame? And this is that other question that I don't like the blame word either. So in the questions that I shared last week, it was, is there something I can be doing better, in my mind? Or it was, do I need to own my part in anything? So this is the side where I can own my part in it. And so dishonest was the one I checked in this. And I was like, okay, dishonest, what is this? And my part in this was, when I looked back and actually saw it, it was all me. There's this line in the 12-step book that I read, and it was, anything that happens, any fear, any of the stuff, happens as a result of a decision that I make. I make a decision based on self that later puts me in a position to be hurt. And in these situations, she actually asked me, do you want the spaghetti? No, you eat it. The victim, I didn't want to mix it with something else I was eating. I compromise in that moment, and it later puts me in a position where I have resentment or anger because I'm not speaking what I feel. Whatever it is in that moment is the way that happens. The other one, she said, I can do the dishes later. But my mind, I don't want to leave dishes. It's something I have a belief that you don't leave dishes around for someone else. So then, of course, I'm a victim there, and I jump into that identity and I follow it. So this just gives me, this little process at night gives me an opportunity to look back to see where I'm compromising, where I'm actually taking things on. And yeah, if you can show the 7 parts of self as well, Nicholas, this is the little screen that I look at if I ever need help with just seeing what part of self. And it's always going to land in one of these things, And pride, the one I click pride, how I think others view me. This is a tricky one, because people-pleasing always ends up there. And it's like, you wouldn't think so. It's like people-pleasing, but it's actually a selfish act, people-pleasing, to do things because I'm worried about how others will view me if I say something. So anyway, this is the little process that I actually do at night, and see how many people's name make my list. But it doesn't always make it to the list, but it's always a helpful way to train my mind to bring it back to what's my part in it, or anything else. The other thing that I use is the levels of mind. And the levels of mind do the same type of thing, so that's part of my nightly review. I do those things with these questions so that I can keep my mind clear. And last night I didn't actually I fell asleep early. That's why I woke up so early. And I didn't get to go through the process. So there were some remnants, so that when I got into my morning, what are my disturbances? There were still some things there. And the other thing that I've been looking at recently was comparisons and competition. And someone wrote in or sent me a message after the last show, and it was about comparisons and competition and questioning their own commitment by actually watching the show and saying, oh, you do all this stuff, and from the things I share, and then questioning their own commitments. And so that competition thing, comparison, it's actually comparison, but it lends to competition, comes into the mind so quickly. And that's just another opportunity to watch our mind, to actually see where these things are coming in and to identify them. And a couple of sections that came to me, the first one being, immediately when I read it, this was the thing that came to mind, and it's from chapter 7. It's the reality of the kingdom. And it starts in the third paragraph here, and I'm going to read this because this is something I read often. There's, like I always say, there's certain sections that I go over and over, and this, in chapter 7, it's the gifts of the kingdom, and I read these very frequently. So starting in the third paragraph there, it says, "You who are not at war must look for brothers and recognize all whom you see as brothers, because only equals are at peace." So this is telling me that anytime I make a comparison or, step into any type of competition, there goes my peace. I'm giving it away, just as that direction of thought. Because God's equal sons have everything. They cannot compete. So I'm actually doing something that I can't do. This is the same thing as judgment. The ultimate thing is to realize that we can't judge. Yet if they perceive any of their brothers as anything other than their perfect equals, the idea of competition has entered their minds. So this is, if I think I'm better or worse than, it's always this idea of, if I'm not seeing someone as a perfect equal, I need to pull it back. And this is the part I love. Do not underestimate your need to be vigilant against this idea, because all of your conflicts come from it. I mean, that's amazing too. All of the conflict in my mind comes from the idea of competition. I mean, competition with God, but it's going to show up in competition with the ones around me, my family members, my friends, my coworkers. It's going to show up there, and that's the opportunity for me to bring it back and to watch my mind. This is the one that's amazing. So I just said that all my conflict comes from this idea of competition. And then this is the amazing part. It is the belief that conflicting interests are possible. So that's like profound to me, to think that the competition thought is actually solved by me letting go of the belief that someone has a different interest than me. And it's like, whoa, it's actually mind-blowing to think that that's what's underneath my competitive thoughts. And therefore you have accepted the impossible as true. If I believe that conflicting interests are possible because they are not, I've accepted the impossible. Is that any different from saying you perceive yourself as unreal? So it's the same thing as me saying that I'm a body and I'm all of these other illusions. Then the fourth paragraph says, to be in the kingdom is merely to focus your full attention on it. As long as you believe you can attend to what is not true, you are accepting conflict as your choice. So as long as I'm accepting these untrue thoughts, so this is all I'm trying to do, as I said a few weeks ago, what thoughts do I have that God would not have? The thought that someone's better or the thought that someone's worse, all those thoughts that enter my mind, I need to watch them as they come in and not bite them and not actually believe them as they come in. I love that. As long as you believe you can attend to whatnot. So this is all about attention. It says to be in the kingdom is merely to focus my attention on it. Where is my attention? We watched a beautiful video here a couple of weeks ago about where is my attention? And if my attention is on those things, I'm lost. My peace is gone. So then it brought me to my next favorite section in chapter 7, which is from vigilance to peace. And these two paragraphs are some of my favorites as well. Although you can love the sonship only as one, as equals, perfect equals, you can perceive it as fragmented. It is impossible, however, to see something in part of it that you will not attribute to all of it. That is why attack is never discrete, and why you must relinquish it entirely. If it is not relinquished entirely, it is not relinquished at all. Fear and love make or create, depending on whether the ego or the Holy Spirit begets or inspires them. But they will return to the mind of the thinker, and they will affect his total perception. So by accepting what is not true, it's coming back to my mind, and that's what's causing my perception. That includes my concept of God. Anyone from 12 Steps knows that a God of your understanding, we get to choose our own concept of God for the first time in our life. We get to say, it's not the guy in a white robe that's judging me. Oh, it is love. Okay, I'm willing to accept that. And we can actually choose this concept. So I'm placing this on. This includes my concept of God, my creations, my brothers, the ones that I believe I'm in competition with that have separate interests, and himself. He will not appreciate any of them if he regards them fearfully. If I regard any of my brothers, anything fearfully, and that's competition thoughts, that leads to jealousy, all of that stuff. I will not appreciate any of them if I regard them fearfully. I will appreciate all of them if I regard them with love. So this is just, again, an opportunity to watch my thoughts. And then here it is. This is, I always say my favorite, but this paragraph might be my favorite in the whole chapter. The mind that accepts attack cannot love. That is because it believes it can destroy love, and therefore does not understand what love is. If it does understand what love is, it cannot perceive itself as loving. This loses the awareness of being, induces feelings of unreality, and results in utter confusion. Your thinking has done this because of its power, but your thinking can also save you from this because its power is not of your making. This is the surrender of step one in recovery, of letting go. There's a line that I can't, he can, I think I'll let him. Like, this power is not of me, and that's why it can save me. Your ability to direct your thinking as you choose is part of its power. I think that's why I love the paragraph so much, is because it tells me that I can direct my thinking, that I do have an opportunity to not choose the thought of competition or any of it, or what I perceive. I can actually say no. No, thank you. I always try to say that in my mind when something comes in or enters, often. No, thank you. I'll ask Holy Spirit instead. If you do not believe you can do this, you have denied the power of your thought and thus rendered it powerless in your belief. This is the state of helplessness that we all find ourselves in, and it's as a result of, because then the next paragraph goes into the ingeniousness of the ego and how that works. So there was one more section now that I was drawn to. So I think I'll just keep going with this chapter. And this is the totality of the kingdom. So we went from the reality of the kingdom, saw that we can control our thoughts, to the totality of the kingdom. And this is actually what I do at night and in the morning, is I'm praying on whether someone sends me a communication or where my mind's at, what I do with my resentment inventory. Those questions at night will lead me to a section of the Course that may have the answer for me. The totality of the kingdom, which is section 7 in chapter 7. Whenever you deny a blessing to a brother, you will feel deprived, because denial is as total as love. It is impossible to deny part of the sonship as it is to love it in part. Nor is it possible to love it totally at times. You cannot be totally committed sometimes. Denial has no power in itself, but you can give it the power of your mind. So this is the choice that we have here, to give the power. Whose power is without limit? If you use it to deny reality, reality is gone for you. Reality cannot be partly appreciated. That is why depriving any part of it means you have lost the awareness of all of it. Yet denial is a defense, and so it is as capable of being used positively as well as negatively. This was the part, I don't even know if I said this, but having this realization of my mind using to separate, I can actually hand it to the Holy Spirit. You know, I used to have the power. You know, people used to say I was quick-witted and all this stuff, and I could cut people down, and I actually was admired for it by the people I surrounded myself with. But I can hand that same thing over to the Spirit and use it to actually bring together rather than separate. Used negatively, it will be destructive because it will be used for attack. But in the service of the Holy Spirit, it can help you recognize part of reality and thus appreciate all of it. Now I'll be able to see with the vision of the Holy Spirit what I should see. Mind is too powerful to be subject to exclusion. You will never be able to exclude yourself from your thoughts. This was the lesson the other day when we had the show, was that I'm affected only by my thoughts. So realizing I can never exclude myself from those thoughts, that's what my morning shows have been about. Like, if I know these things, why am I not spending more time at night, in the morning, giving the time to my mind to get my mind prepared for the day? There's this pay attention thing I thought of. It's this poet, Mary Oliver, and it was called The Instructions on a Living Life, or I think that's what it's called. And she said, pay attention, be astonished, and talk about it. Those are the three instructions. And it's like, pay attention to my mind, pay attention to what I think I'm perceiving, and then be astonished, like, oh my God, I don't have to think that way anymore. I can ask the Holy Spirit. And then tell people about it like I am now. Like I shared on the last show, like anytime there's something that helps you, share it with someone else, and it ends up strengthening it in your own mind. I had, the other thing I wanted to share was this idea of feeling relaxed comes from this for me. So in the morning when I do these things, and again, it extends throughout the day, I can start to pause more. And I shared that I changed my password. That thing has been unbelievable. Every time I pick up my phone, so I changed the password for those of you who may have not seen the last show. I changed the password on my phone so that every time I pick it up, it's not facial ID. I have to type in the password. It's a little bit longer, and it reminds me to do my practice of the feelings I'm choosing, the feelings I want, my responsibility for sight in those moments. And the amount of times I pick up my phone and do that a day is, I can't even count. But each time I pick up my phone, I notice that it's always, a lot of times can be reactive. Like someone will tell me, oh, did you see this message? And I'll pick it up, and this gives me that moment to pause and be like, oh, okay, wait, hold on. Let me set the goal here. And then I do that, and then it changes everything. Like I can't pick up the phone and take a quick snapshot anymore, or a picture. I have to pause and actually pray each time I do it. It's changed my life in the week that I've been doing it or whatever. And part of that and this and, doing these things in the morning and setting my mind right is I go more confidently into the day that I am hearing Spirit because I am pausing, I am praying, I am joining with others and doing these things consistently. So that when I get the prompt, I don't have to actually sit. Actually, Jason shared this on a show the other day. I hadn't read, I think it's Peace of God is my one goal, but the woman in there says that she prays in the morning and then goes through her day confidently, like thinking that she's being guided. I do the same thing. I have done the same thing because I'm spending this time turning over my mind. So now I go through my day. It's only the part of the development of trust. It's only the sorting out process. What is most helpful? Everything I'm doing now is coming from that place. So now it's just, hey, what's most helpful here? Yesterday I was sitting and was going to join with Susanna, and she was still visiting. She wanted to join now, and then she was there, and then I was sitting there, and I prayed, and I was like, oh, I'm supposed to go. I was going to go for a walk, and I walked out and she was like, oh, how about now? And I was like, no, I think I'm supposed to go now. And I walked out the front door. I didn't get around the corner, and this guy pulls up on the side of the road. He's like, hey, you live here? And I said, yeah, I live here. Within 10 minutes, we had this conversation about the Course in Miracles, the 12 steps. He wants to start a group around the corner at the library, like all this stuff. The guy was trying to help sell the property in the past, so had known some of the people that were here before. But it was like this total holy encounter, and he was like, oh, I'm so glad I ran into you. And I was glad I ran into him. And after we were done, I walked back in the house. It was like, that was what I was there for. But it's like, it's that point of when these things come in now, I don't have to question them. I can say, oh, okay. I can always pause again and ask, but it's like, no, I'm doing these things so that I can go confidently, This is that other line that I love. Anticipation plays no part at all. I'm not going to worry about what's going to happen if I follow the prompt anymore. Present confidence leads the way. So if I'm doing these things daily, I can settle into that, and I can remember, oh, I am being guided here. Wait, I'm handing over my will constantly. You know, that one that I said, each day, you know, throughout the day, these thoughts need to go, they must go with me constantly. Thy will be done. How can I best serve thee? If that is constantly my prayer underneath and my purpose, then when these things come in, I don't have to question when I get the smaller prompts, oh, go do this. I do it, and then it's like, wow, yesterday I settled into a meditation, I immediately got a prompt to call someone. I called them, they're like, oh my God, you were just on I was just thinking of you. And it's like, yes, and those are the reminders. I expect miracles now. I don't, when that happens, it's not like, oh my God, I can't believe that. It's like, yes, of course that's what's going to happen, because this is what I'm spending my time doing, trying to connect with that power that's guiding me through my day so that it can be more relaxed and I don't have to be stressed out and have those responsibilities like I do in that first hour of the day when I try to stay in bed. So, and it's all about trust. So, it's about time for this morning. Feels a good place to stop. Thanks for joining me again. And we have an online retreat this weekend, so I won't have my Sunday show, but I will be back next Tuesday, and we'll see what is going on then. So thanks, and enjoy your day, and pay attention.